Hello and welcome to my channel. This is Teresa, Craftygrams. Excuse me. So I have been asked to do a how-to. I'm not going to call it a tutorial because I'm not a tutor on any of this kind of stuff. But how to do a sew a journal together. So what most people use for this is what's called a 3-hole pamphlet stitch. So before we get into too much, let's talk about the basic supplies. You can use anything, almost anything you have at home already will do for this project. Of course, you need paper of any kind, any variety. I have some scraps of tea-dyed paper and this highly not oriented correctly piece of, scrapbook paper. Excuse me. And then the next thing is you need something to poke holes with. A strong pen body would do the job. If you have, just anything sharp, obviously. But this is what's called an awl, A-W-L, to poke the holes with. I use some binder clamps. You could also use paper clips depending on how many pages you're trying to hold together, and then a pencil to mark where you want the holes to be. I have 3 different varieties of thread. This is actual unwaxed, I think, bookbinders thread. Don't have to have that. I also have some just sewing machine thread, or, whatever kind of thread you have around. And this is also some just embroidery floss. Whatever you have on hand, whatever is available is good for this purpose. And a needle. This needle is really long and almost gone from there we go. It's very long, but the key to the needle selection is that it has a rather large hole, because usually what you use to bind journals is heavier weight, obviously, because you don't want it to break easily when you're performing the actual binding, sewing. All right, I also have here I use a paperback. There's all kinds of ways to do this. You can buy a book cradle. You can use a foam mat, a piece of old carpet padding, whatever you have to hand. I like the book because when I'm done with it, I can probably do something else with the pages. Anyway, so the first thing to do is to decide where you want the holes to be. Now, for, I guess, stability reasons and consistency, the 3-hole pamphlet stitch is usually 1 hole in the center of the height of the book you're binding together, and then as much or as little as you want, but usually 1 inch or so from the top and the bottom. A lot of people have tutorials on how to make these, templates for it. You measure from, top to bottom, find the center, all that stuff. The only time I would even make a template personally is if I was putting more than 1 signature, and this is a signature. The inside papers are what's called a signature. The group of papers that you have folded, usually in half, but the group of papers that you have to go inside of your journal is called a signature. Now, if you'll notice that books, okay, well, not this one because it's glued, but a lot of books most books have several signatures, and if they're bound professionally, they have scads of small signatures. And of course I can't find one here. But anyway, it's the group of pages that you put in all together is called a signature. So this obviously is just a single signature, simple scrap paper pad. So again, you decide where you want your holes to be based on the 3 holes, and there's a myriad of other ways and numbers of holes you can poke in, and bookbinders know all about that. There's decorative stitches you can use that look really pretty on the spine of a book. I'm not that girl. I just I don't do actual book making. I just do journal binding, and almost every instance, the 3-hole pamphlet stitch is sufficient to my needs. And even with just the 3-hole pamphlet stitch, you can do some things, and I'll explain that as I go along. So the first step is I do try to center the pages top to bottom and front to back so that there's about the same amount of overhang of the front of the journal, and then I will clamp it together, clip it together, clamp it together, whatever. I'm from the South, we call it clamping. I do opposite sides. I do the top of one side and then the bottom of the other side, just to keep everything all nice and even. And the biggest issue is to keep the pages close to the fold of the cover, because if that slides out any, then you're going to end up stitching them in very loosely. They will tear easily. You'll have just myriads of problems. So clamp them together, like I said, with whatever you have. Paper clips will do, definitely will do for a project this small, but that's the first thing, so that you get the holes that the holes will be consistent in the same place from the pages all the way through to the cover. So and the best thing that I found to do is to do this at an angle so that the awl comes out the actual center, because if you open it up and try and do it like that, when you fold the book, you may not be exactly on that spine when you fold it closed. So your book's going to be closed at an angle, so it should be poked at an angle, is my philosophy. May be wrong, may be right. That's the way I do it. So I'm going to really and truly just eyeball the center. And that looks good enough for me. And again, I'm going to go in here with the awl, find what I'm going to call the center, hold the book closed, and poke. There you go. Now, if your book wasn't already exhausted like mine is, if it sat up like that, which is why a lot of people use a book, a book cradle, is that it automatically holds the papers you're binding together at an angle so that your awl goes through at an angle, or whatever you're using for your pokey tool. But this is how I would actually do it, is just put it sort of down and push through, and then even when I get the hole made, I will pull the whole thing out and make it big enough so that it is very easy for my needle to slip in and out of. Because a tiny pinhole size is, you may get one layer of pages and cover, but you're not going to get all of them very easily, for sure. And there we go. We have 3 holes, and a word to the wise from the not so wise is to leave the awl in. Even though you have it clamped, you leave the awl in until you get your needle and thread ready to go. A lot of people will do that before they start poking holes. I don't always remember clearly. So and do that way. And a rule of thumb that I've always used is your thread should be 3 heights of the book, the journal. So that's 1, 2, 3, very loosely measured again. And if you want to put a decorative bow or have links that hang down from the bottom to put beads on, or if you're going to put beads along the spine, you just give a little bit of extra space and then cut it. Right. So now the fun part is, well, there it is. Not real great at this thing. I'm awkward at this, but I get it done. And no one would ever know by looking at it that I have struggled mightily to get it there. But we shall struggle together in this instance. Okay. So, excuse me. If you start from the inside of your journal, your excess thread is going to be on the inside. If you start from the outside, it's going to be on the outside. So I don't know why, but I always start from the inside. I don't know. And I'm left-handed, so everything I do looks awkward anyway, but that's life. Okay. Most importantly, when you put your needle through the center, whichever way you put it in, from the outside or from the inside, grasp hold of that end, because you don't want to be sewing along only to discover that you're pulling the end with you and you're sewing for nothing. So now I'm going to take the awl out and try and come back through there. And again, you know, don't make giant holes, but holes that are big enough for you to be able to see to put the needle through are really, really helpful. So you go through the middle, and then through either the top or the bottom, and then out through the one you haven't touched yet, all right? This happens a lot. I get the thread caught on the pages or in the clamps. It's just all kinds of awkward. And, you know, this is amazingly smooth for, for my usual attempts. Okay, so now the next most important thing is, there's a lot of important things here to this, but once you do it for a while, it gets better. I won't say I'm perfect at it yet, but it does get better. So when you come to the end, you put your needle and thread through the last hole. You want one tail of the thread to be on each side of the center thread. And miraculously, that has happened for me in this instance. And then you just want to pull it snug, not real tight, not so tight that the thread tears the pages, but tight enough so that it's not gonna, the signature's not gonna wiggle within the binding. Okay, so I have one really short tail and one really excessively long tail. And that's okay. If you want them to be the same length, you just sort of fiddle with the two lengths, pulling on one, letting go of the other to, nope, pulling that one. There we go. Let's see what we get. This is kind of like lacing your shoes. You got to find that perfect balance. But anyway, the first thing to do is, like I said, get it snug but not too tight. And if you have a person available with another set of fingers, like wrapping a package, put that finger there. If you don't, you just sort of make it conform to your will. So, and the idea is to put a square knot in here so that it doesn't come loose. But once I get one in there, I'm just going to do a couple more, because I'll know which way I was holding those threads, whether it was over that one or under that one. So I just do I do at least 3 of them, so that way somewhere in there is bound to be a square knot. Okay, now I don't really care if anything hangs down on this one, and either way it's way too long and still not even. But I'm just gonna cut this close to home there, and boom. A lot of wasted thread, but there's always other uses for that. Okay, so now take the clamps off. And voila, Bob's your uncle. And you have a signature sewn into the journal cover. Well, it could have been a little tighter. See, there's some wiggle there, which is why I don't like to do things on camera that are fiddly like this. But hey, nobody's perfect. It's all junk journaling anyway. And so, you know, nothing's going to come out of there, especially once you get it decorated. But you know, there's ways of getting around it. You can drop a little splat of glue on there if you feel like it's going to come undone, or and I have done this before with, you know, more delicate papers, like if I use a piece of book page that's a little prone to tearing, I have done and would again put a piece of washi tape and maybe reinforce the spine all together with some washi tape here and here and wherever. So what I was saying about doing some decorative elements, even with this basic stitches, when you put your needle through for the first time, before you go into either of the other holes, you could string some beads onto this piece of thread, and then, you know, just a few of them, or stack them enough to, you know, between the holes, like have enough on there to entirely cover that string from hole to hole, and the same thing on the other end before you bring it back in for the final time. This is a very good way of putting a page dangle on. You could use that same hole to put a metal piece of loop through and hang a book dangle from. You could just poke another hole somewhere up here to put a bulb or a gourd pin on to hang some beads from. There's a million different ways. Like I say all the time, the only limit is your imagination. Once you know the basics of anything, as with any school subject or artistic endeavor, once you know the basics, you can expand it, change it, switch it, embellish it any way you choose. The only limit is your own imagination. So I hope you enjoyed this very quick, probably very awkward tutorial, how-to. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching. Bye.